Hey folks, remember all the way back in January when I reviewed Rebel Moon and said that it wasn't a good movie by any means, but it was a good time, and I gave a very soft recommendation based on that because it's a movie you can laugh at and enjoy on that level. Yeah, I might be over that. This movie sucks. This is Matt with State of Flex here with a review for Rebel Toon, the sequel to Rebel Moon called The Scargiver. Now, let's break down the name The Scargiver. The Scargiver is the moniker that the main character takes on, and like most Zack Snyder things, isn't really particularly well thought out. It sounds badass on the surface, but when you really break it down, it speaks of a person who's incapable of killing. It is a person who tries, but fails. And maybe that whole idea was just foreshadow for the end of the first movie where the main character, the Scargiver, kills the bad guy, but he doesn't die. He returns in this film with a big old nasty scar in the center of his chest. We're going to circle back to the Scargiver at the end of this review, but like most things, Zack Snyder, it isn't a particularly well thought out film. The first movie, even though I gave it a soft recommendation in terms of you can laugh at it, but it's not good, the biggest issue that film has is it's like 2.5 hours, and 2 hours of that movie is dedicated to putting a team together. This is something that a better filmmaker would have done in, say, a montage. Like, don't most heist movies accomplish this in a single montage? Hell, the first Star Wars movie essentially does it in a single scene. Obi-Wan and Luke go to the cantina, and then they got their team, and then they go. Even Rogue One does it in just a couple of scenes, not over the course of the entire feature film. The first one does it over the course of the entire feature film, which then brings that film down to feeling like the filmic equivalent of this could have been an email. Well, this extends that because the first 14 minutes of this film, in at least 4 separate scenes, are all exposition soup, recapping what happened at the end of the previous movie, or throughout the duration of the previous movie. Now, what I find most perplexing about this is that at one point, Rebel Moon was one script. So, as of now, we have two 2-hour-plus movies that string together into a 4-hour feature film. And at one point, the center of this said feature film was just exposition of what happened prior? That's weird, right? And, like, let alone the fact that there's going to be an hour-long extended cut for both parts of the film, which is its own Zack Snyder-y mess. The thing that is, like, jaw-dropping about this is you can easily compare this to Star Wars for a number of reasons. This was originally intended as Zack Snyder's take on Star Wars. He wanted to do Seven Samurai in the Star Wars universe. Catherine Kennedy turned him down. He goes to Netflix, they say, yes, do it. So he has this 6-hour-long script. Now, I know that when you're shaving things and whittling down, you don't, you make allowances for that, and you might want, the want will be to recap on some level what happened to catch the audience up to date. But what's another movie that did this exact same thing? Isn't it Star Wars? Didn't George Lucas write Star Wars as one long script, a 200-page script? That's what the public zeitgeist tells us. I know it's not necessarily accurately true, because you can find his old dead scripts online, but it is, for the most part, kind of true. And if put into those terms, Hope, Empire, and Jedi, that would be like in The Empire Strikes Back, when Luke gets to Dagobah, he takes a 14-minute detour where he's like, alright, Yoda, sit down, I'm going to tell you what happened. So these robots came to my doorstep, and believe it or not, they were running from these bad guys that really want this little disc thing. And then you get a flashback momentarily of them trying to get that, but then you eventually get the scene where Luke then meets Obi-Wan and all this kind of stuff. Imagine that in Star Wars. The movie stops dead. It has no life. There's no point to that. And George Lucas and the filmmakers behind Star Wars had better sense to do something like that. Zack Snyder has no sense. And in fact, when George Lucas did include that in Return of the Jedi, they do a recap in Return of the Jedi. C-3PO does it for the Ewoks in another language in 40 seconds, and he does it through the use of like oral storytelling. And we get the picture. We take that journey with 3PO. This film, a better filmmaker would have done just that. Instead, we have the first half hour is dedicated to recapping past events or doing post-coital discussions of backstory exposition that you already kind of got in the previous movie. We're just getting again restated, more fleshed out. And it's mind-numbing. The whole film is mind-numbing. It takes a full hour before you get your first real action set piece, and that's where Zack Snyder excels. And like I said in the previous review, he would make for a good director of a video game. I do think he would do that very, very well. However, he's not interested in doing that. He's interested in being a bad filmmaker, it seems, that is determined to get several bites of the exact same apple. He's still trying to get off the ground his Sucker Punch director's cut, because his movies work better when they have director's cuts, long versions of film. And it's like, if every filmmaker was given unlimited time and infinite money, they could make better versions of their movies. But that doesn't make those movies good in the first place, and this movie isn't good. It doesn't seem to be speaking to audiences, it's certainly not speaking to critics, and it doesn't even benefit the first movie. If anything, it dampens it into being an even more dead and dour version of the same film that already existed. I don't know that a director's cut is going to flesh anything out. It might make things more cohesive, but cohesive does not make it better. And it's just, I can't anymore. I just can't. This movie is garbage. I give it 1 star. It is the worst movie of this year, and I'm done. I just can't anymore. And he has plans for 6 of these things. Like, the one thing I will say is that Zack Snyder's not afraid to kill characters. The emotional deaths that happen in this film read a little hollow, but he's willing to kill characters, and I think that works. And I think that also would suit better to the video game format, because when you're playing the game, you get naturally invested in the characters because you are playing them and spending considerably more time with them than you get with this hollow rendition of a film. Ugh. I'm over it. I said we'd circle back to the Scargiver. The one thing that made me laugh out loud during this movie, and I'm going to spoil the ending, so if you want to hop off, here's the time. The movie sucks. Don't waste your time. If you're going to listen for the next 60 seconds, you're going to hear my sad little joke, which is, she calls herself the Scargiver. That's the moniker she has, because apparently she's incapable of death. The bad guys are resurrected for this film and comes after her because death has no meaning, which means that all the significant deaths in this film really ring hollow, even more so. But she finally has the big confrontation with the big bad once more for the second time in this movie now. They have their big battle. They're in death's throes. The bad guy gets, for want of a better word, killed. He is stuck in a certain point, and just to make sure, she decapitates him. So, would that make her the head? Regardless, thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.